The blizzard roars across northern Montana, swallowing the world in white. Inside an abandoned tavern by the frozen lake, Navy SEAL Jack Walker and his German Shepherd Rex find an old man trapped beneath the ice, clutching a rusted medallion marked 1936. But when they pull him out, the ground trembles, and something answers from below. That night, strange knocks echo through the floorboards. A sheriff warns Jack to leave, but the lake keeps calling, whispering names no one's spoken in decades. When the bell beneath the ice tolls again, the mountain will remember, and every secret buried in that water will rise. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides beneath the coldest storms. The wind over Lake Placid carried a voice that night, thin, cold, and full of warning. Snow whipped across the empty road like shreds of torn silk, and in that frozen wilderness, a single figure trudged onward. Lieutenant Jack Walker, a 38-year-old Navy SEAL, moved with the quiet precision of someone long trained to listen to silence. His build was lean and powerful, every motion controlled. The lines around his eyes were cut deep, the kind carved not by age but by memory. His short-cropped hair, once chestnut, was streaked with silver. His jaw bore a faint stubble that he rarely bothered to shave. After 16 years of deployments, Afghanistan, the Gulf, then clandestine Arctic missions, Jack had learned to find comfort in solitude, or at least he told himself he did. Beside him padded Rex, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a thick black and tan coat and intelligent amber eyes. The dog had served in the K-9 division before an IED blast left a faint scar along his flank. Rex moved low to the snow, breathing in the storm like it was language. His gait was steady, soldierly. Two veterans, different species, same discipline. Jack had driven north from the base in Burlington earlier that week, meant to inspect winter survival routes for an upcoming SEAL cold weather training. But when his radio went dead and the snow thickened, he'd simply kept going, drawn by something in the air, an instinct he couldn't name. It wasn't duty that guided him now. It was the hunger for stillness, the kind only the mountains could offer. He paused at a turn, brushing snow from his hood, and glanced across the frozen tree line. The forest loomed like a cathedral of black pines. For a moment, he thought he heard the faint echo of water beneath the ice. Then Rex's ears twitched. The dog's low growl rose through the wind, 3 sharp taps of his paw against the snow, his old signal for something's wrong. Jack stilled. "What is it, buddy?" he muttered, lowering his flashlight. Through the howl of the blizzard came a sound, fragile, human, desperate, a cry for help, faint, but real. Jack's pulse tightened. Training took over. He slung his rifle to his back, grabbed a coil of rope, and followed Rex into the dark. The slope ahead was treacherous, iced over, the snow deep enough to swallow a boot hole. His breath came in bursts of steam. "Keep the line, Rex," he ordered softly. The dog barked once, nose pressed to the ground, leading through the maze of pines until the cry grew clearer, a man's voice, trembling with pain. The ground gave way beneath Jack's boot, revealing a gaping pit camouflaged by snow and leaves. At the bottom, an old man struggled to move, his coat torn, one leg twisted unnaturally. Jack's flashlight caught his face, weathered, lean, white hair plastered to his forehead. "Help! Damn thing gave out under me!" Jack's instincts snapped sharp. "Hold on," he called, anchoring the rope to a birch trunk. He descended slowly, boots scraping frost. Up close, he saw that the man was in his late 70s, his eyes a piercing pale blue that refused to surrender, his breath fogged between chattering teeth. "I'm Lieutenant Jack Walker, Navy," Jack said evenly. "You're going to be fine." The old man managed to grin despite the pain. "Arthur Collins," he gasped, "own a little tavern down by the lake, or maybe it owns me." His voice was equal parts grit and humor, the sound of a man who'd lived through both joy and stubbornness. Jack looped the rope beneath his arms and called to Rex. "Pull, boy." The dog braced, teeth gripping the rope, every muscle taut. Slowly, inch by inch, they hauled Arthur upward until his hands reached the edge. Once on solid ground, Arthur collapsed back, laughing through shivers. "You pull a man from the earth, son, you're stuck with him." Jack allowed himself a ghost of a smile. "Guess I've had worse missions." They trudged toward the road, the snow thick as fog. Jack guided the old man into his battered black pickup, Rex leaping into the back seat. The heater groaned as they drove toward the lake. Arthur talked between pained breaths, telling stories of a time when the tavern had been alive with music and fishermen, when Mirror Lake was said to bring luck. "Now it's just me and the ghosts," he said softly. Jack said nothing, eyes fixed on the drifting snowflakes illuminated by the headlights. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in places that remembered. War zones did. So did men. Maybe taverns too. As they neared the lake, Rex let out a sudden bark, sharp and defensive. Jack's hand went to the steering wheel, scanning the mirrors. For a heartbeat, he saw a pale silhouette at the tree line, a figure, tall, unmoving, then gone. No tracks followed. "Probably a deer," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. When they reached the edge of the lake, the fog parted enough to reveal the tavern, a 2-story wooden building raised on stone pillars, its windows glowing dimly. A faded sign swung in the wind. Lakeside Lantern Tavern, the paint chipped, the image of a loon bird barely visible. Jack carried Arthur inside, the air thick with the scent of oak, smoke, and thyme. The walls were lined with old fishing photos, each face frozen mid-laughter. A single wood stove burned weakly in the corner, casting a copper glow. Dust coated everything, yet the place felt preserved, like someone had left yesterday and never returned. "Sit here," Jack said, easing the man into an armchair near the stove. Rex circled once, then lay beside Arthur's boots, head resting against them. "He likes you," Jack remarked. Arthur chuckled faintly. "Dogs know who's got honest bones." His voice cracked with fatigue. "Storm'll bury the road by dawn. You best stay the night. Keys are behind the bar. Place might creak, but it don't bite." Jack poured him water, checked his leg again, then turned toward the fire. He could feel the quiet pressing in, the kind that listened back. The wind rattled the shutters once, then all went still. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching. 3 soft knocks echoed from beneath the floorboards. Sharp, deliberate, then silence. Jack froze, heart hammering. He crouched, pressed his hand to the wooden planks. They were cold, no vibration, no settling. Just stillness. "Probably the wood shifting," he whispered, but even Rex didn't believe it. The dog stared at the floor, eyes glowing amber, body rigid. Then came a second set of knocks. 3 again, slower this time, as if something beneath was answering. The fire hissed. Arthur stirred in his chair, but didn't wake. Jack reached for his flashlight, scanning the corners of the room. Nothing moved. Only the faint crackle of the stove remained and the low hum of wind across the lake. When he looked back down, Rex was staring at the fire, not the floor, with his ears flattened, and in the dying coals pulsed a faint blue light, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat refusing to die. Jack swallowed hard. "Rex," he whispered, "you seeing that too?" The dog didn't move. He just stared. Outside, the storm roared louder, but inside the tavern, every sound seemed to fade until there was only that strange, quiet pulse, steady, patient, waiting. The chapter closes as Jack leans closer to the glow, unaware that beneath the tavern floor something ancient has begun to stir. Morning crept into the tavern like a reluctant guest, turning the frosted windows into faint mirrors. Lieutenant Jack Walker woke on the couch near the stove, the blanket half fallen, his rifle propped beside him out of habit. The fire had died to embers, yet the faint blue glow he'd seen the night before was gone, leaving only gray ash. Rex, his German shepherd, stirred beside the hearth, tail twitching in his sleep. Jack's eyes flicked to the floorboards where the knocks had sounded. Silent now. He exhaled, uncertain whether to feel relieved or unsettled. The room smelled of cedar smoke and damp wool. He rose, joints stiff, and crossed to check on Arthur Collins, who still dozed in the armchair wrapped in a wool blanket. The old man's face, creased and pale, looked softer in daylight. On the small table beside him sat a half-empty mug and an old photograph of the tavern in its youth. Lights blazing, fishermen laughing on the porch, a younger Arthur standing tall among them. Time had taken his strength but not his pride. Jack studied the image, then quietly fetched wood for the fire. The creak of the front door broke the quiet. A woman stepped inside, brushing snow from her coat. She was in her mid-30s, tall and slender, her movements brisk but careful, like someone used to balancing too much at once. Her copper-blonde hair was tied back in a messy braid, a few strands curling around a freckled face flushed by the cold. Her hazel eyes scanned the room with quick intelligence before softening at the sight of the old man. "Arthur, you scared us half to death," she said, her voice low, firm, and laced with genuine worry. Arthur stirred, blinking. "Maya?" "Yes, Maya Lindstrom, the woman who still pays your utility bills," she replied dryly, setting down a basket of firewood. Maya was the kind of woman who never complained aloud but whose silence carried weight. Widowed 5 years earlier after her husband drowned during an ice rescue, she had built her own quiet resilience. She ran supplies for the townsfolk, mended fishing nets, and kept the tavern stocked when Arthur forgot the world beyond his porch. Her clothes, flannel shirt, jeans, and boots caked in the frost, spoke of work, not vanity. Jack stepped forward. "He fell into a pit off the trail," he explained. "Broken leg, but he'll be fine. I'm Jack Walker." Maya's gaze swept over him, his rugged face, weather-bitten skin, and the military precision in his stance. "You're not from here," she said simply. "Just passing through," Jack replied, though even he wasn't sure that was true anymore. She gave a small nod, then crouched beside Arthur. "You're lucky he found you," she murmured, checking the bandage Jack had tied. "Storm nearly closed every road." Arthur chuckled weakly. Luck or punishment, hard to tell which. From the back of the room came the soft pad of paws. Rex approached, tail wagging once, and sniffed Maya's boots before sitting expectantly. "Well, hello, soldier," she said, scratching behind his ears. "Aren't you handsome?" Jack almost smiled. Rex rarely warmed up to strangers that fast. The dog's tail thumped twice, then stilled, ears twitching toward the bar counter. A faint metallic sound echoed beneath the floorboards. A clink, like a latch shifting. Jack's instincts flared. He moved to the bar, crouched, and tapped the wood. Hollow. The sound came again, slower this time, almost deliberate. Maya frowned. We sealed the basement years ago. Flooding issue. Arthur's eyes opened at that, blue and bright. That door was never sealed right, he muttered. My father built this place with secret bones. Secret bones? Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. Arthur nodded. Prohibition days. They hid barrels under the floor, said the lake gave them whiskey sweeter than any man could brew. My father said this tavern remembers, and remembering hurts. Rex gave a low growl. Jack laid a hand on his neck. Easy. The dog didn't move. His body was tense, but not afraid, more like he was listening. The sound stopped. Silence stretched. Jack exhaled slowly. Probably pipe shifting. Cold does that. Maya glanced toward the stove. I'll check the pantry. Maybe the storm warped the boards. She disappeared through a side door. Jack followed, ducking under a low beam. The pantry was small, lined with shelves of canned soup, flour, and dusty bottles. Maya knelt to move a crate, and the floor groaned. Dust cascaded as the boards dipped. That's not from the cold, Jack said. He crouched beside her, running his fingers along the seam where the wood met stone. One nail was rusted halfway out. When he pressed, a soft rush of warm air escaped. Air? Maya whispered. Below freezing outside, Jack murmured. That shouldn't happen. They exchanged a look. Then Rex appeared at the doorway, paws muddy, nose to the ground. He tapped once, twice, 3 times. Jack felt the hairs rise on his neck. He's found something. Working together, they pried up a section of the floor. Beneath it lay a narrow wooden staircase descending into darkness. A smell drifted up, not rot, but bourbon and cedar, aged and strangely inviting. Arthur called faintly from the other room. You'll find ghosts down there, Walker. Better ghosts than lies, Jack replied, lowering his flashlight into the void. The beam revealed damp steps and the outline of barrels stacked against stone walls. The cellar looked untouched for decades. Maya hesitated at the top. You really want to go down there? Jack nodded. Someone has to. He descended first, boots sinking into cold earth. The walls were lined with pine boards, the ceiling low. A single shelf held dusty glass bottles and an iron chest. The air hummed faintly, as if vibrating with memory. He ran a hand along a barrel, dry, solid. His flashlight caught faint letters burned into the wood, LLT 1936. What is it? Maya asked from above. Something old and important. At that moment, the lantern flickered. Then from somewhere in the dark corner came a sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. The same pattern from the night before. Rex barked sharply, claws scraping the floorboards. The noise seemed to come from behind the back wall. Jack turned, pressing his palm against the cold wood. It vibrated faintly like the pulse of a living thing. He turned toward Maya, his voice low. This place isn't empty. And then from the top of the stairs came another voice, deep, female, authoritative. Step away from that wall. Jack froze, flashlight swinging upward. At the entrance stood Sheriff Nora Ellis, mid-30s, her figure sharp against the dim light above. She was tall, with bronze skin and dark hair pulled into a tight braid, her uniform crisp, even in the cold. Her presence filled the space like a command. "You must be the seal who pulled Arthur out of the snow," she said coolly. "I'd like to know why you're digging through private property before breakfast." Jack straightened, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Because something here's been waiting to be found." Nora's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea how right you might be." Her words hung in the air like frost. Somewhere beneath their feet, the tavern answered, one long, low creak, as though exhaling. End of Chapter 2. Hook, the sheriff's warning, and the living hum beneath the floor suggest that the tavern holds a secret larger and older than anyone is ready to face. Snow fell in soft spirals outside the tavern, muting the world in white. Inside, the cellar light flickered over 3 uneasy faces. Sheriff Nora Ellis stood at the top of the stairs, one hand resting near the pistol holstered at her hip. Her tone carried authority, but her eyes, dark, observant, betrayed curiosity. Jack Walker, his breath clouding in the cold air, lowered his flashlight, but didn't move from the wall. The faint vibration beneath his palm was gone now, but the echo of it still lingered in his bones. Maya Lindstrom stood behind the sheriff, arms folded, a streak of dust across her cheek. She was trying to appear calm, but her gaze kept darting toward the darkness. "Let me guess," Nora said, descending a step. "You heard something." Jack met her gaze. 3 knocks, twice. Same pattern I heard last night. Nora studied him a moment. "You think it's a person?" Jack shook his head slowly. "No, it's something else." Rex gave a low whine and pawed at the wall again. Nora crouched to look closer. Her breath hitched faintly. "This panel," she said, brushing away grime, "doesn't match the rest. Pine boards, newer cut." She pressed a gloved hand against the seam, and a faint draft of warm air brushed her face. "Arthur told me once his father sealed off the lower cellar during the flood of '36, she added quietly. "Said the lake took something that year." Maya exhaled. "Took what?" Nora straightened, eyes distant. "His brother?" For a heartbeat, the cellar seemed to inhale. Arthur's voice called from above, weak but insistent. "Don't go prying, Sheriff. Some things are better left buried." But Jack had already drawn his utility knife, wedging it into the crack between boards. He pried once, twice, and the wood gave with a groan. Warm, damp air rushed out, carrying the scent of bourbon, clay, and something faintly metallic. Rex backed away, hackles raised. Nora clicked on her flashlight, and its beam cut through the opening. Beyond the broken panel stretched a narrow tunnel slanting downward, walls lined with rough stone and timber supports blackened by time. Maya whispered, "That's heading toward the lake." Nora looked at Jack. "You're not seriously thinking of going in there?" Jack's mouth twitched. "You came with a gun. I've got a flashlight. Seems fair." She frowned, but didn't stop him. The tunnel ceiling was barely high enough for Jack to stand. His boots sank into mud that smelled of riverbed. The deeper he moved, the warmer it became, as though the cold was afraid to follow. The air pulsed softly, like the breath of something asleep. Halfway in, he found what looked like an old wooden crate crushed beneath fallen beams. Letters burned into its lid read LLT Trust Records. He brushed off the dirt and pried it open. Inside were rolls of parchment sealed in wax and a brass medallion bearing the image of a loon bird in flight. Beneath that, a photograph. 5 men standing outside the tavern in 1936, Arthur's father among them. One man in the photo wore a sheriff's badge and the same medallion Jack now held. "Found something," Jack called softly. Behind him, Nora crouched at the entrance, her voice low. "That's the symbol of the Hartley Trust. Old land deed records for the lakeshore." She sounded more scholar than cop now. "That group tried to keep the hydro company from flooding these valleys after the war. Looks like they built more than laws to protect it," Jack muttered. Rex suddenly barked, a sharp, alarmed sound. The tunnel vibrated. Mud shifted under Jack's boots. Water dripped from the beams above, fast, rhythmic, like footsteps. He turned toward the light behind him. "Everyone out, now!" The ground gave a violent lurch. Nora stumbled, grabbing Maya's hand as the tunnel roof cracked. Jack shoved the crate toward the opening and hauled Rex forward. They burst into the cellar just as a section of the tunnel collapsed behind them, throwing up a cloud of dust and ancient air. When the noise settled, Nora coughed, sweeping dust from her coat. "You're insane," she rasped. Jack sat against a barrel, chest heaving. "You're welcome." He glanced at the crate. "At least we got proof the trust existed." Arthur limped to the cellar stairs, pale but defiant. "You brought the lake's curse back with you," he whispered. Jack looked up, frowning. "Curse?" Arthur's voice trembled. "My brother drowned when they built that tunnel. He said he heard something calling from beneath the ice. 3 knocks, always 3. He followed it, and the lake took him." His eyes glistened. "The same sound you heard." Maya stepped closer to him. "Arthur, that's just old grief talking." But the old man shook his head. "No, child, it's the lake remembering." Outside, thunder rolled across the frozen peaks, though no storm had been forecast. The tavern's windows rattled. From the floorboards above, a faint vibration returned. 3 hollow taps. Jack met Nora's gaze. "You feel that?" She nodded, hand hovering near her weapon. "Feels like it's coming from the lake itself." Before anyone could answer, Rex growled, a deep, warning sound that came from his chest. His fur bristled, his gaze locked on the window. Through the curtain of falling snow, a pale blue shimmer flickered across the ice outside, spreading in rings from the lake's center. Maya whispered, "It's like it's breathing." The glow pulsed once, twice, and then vanished. Silence followed, thick and total. Nora exhaled shakily. "Whatever that is," she said, "it's not over." Jack rose slowly, his hand tightening around the brass medallion. Beneath his boots, the tavern's floor trembled faintly, as if something beneath was knocking softly, insistently, asking to be let in. End of Chapter 3. Hook. The tunnel's collapse and the shimmering pulse beneath the frozen lake revealed that the mystery tied to the LLT 1936 Trust is not just historical. It's alive and waiting. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a quiet that felt too deliberate. Mist rose from the frozen lake like breath from a sleeping giant. Jack Walker stood on the porch of the Lakeside Lantern Tavern, coffee steaming in his gloved hand, eyes fixed on the faint blue shimmer that still lingered beneath the ice. Rex, his German shepherd, sat beside him, fur spiked with frost, gaze sharp toward the water. The dog hadn't stopped watching the lake since the night before. Jack's instincts told him that whatever was down there wasn't done speaking. Inside, the tavern had transformed from a place of secrets to a makeshift command post. Sheriff Nora Ellis sat at the long oak table, her jacket off, her dark braid resting over one shoulder. She looked like she hadn't slept, yet her mind was moving fast. Beside her, Maya Lindstrom was setting a kettle on the stove, her copper-blonde hair tied up, face pale from exhaustion, but still steady. Across from them, Arthur Collins looked worse, hollow-eyed, pale, haunted. He stared at the brass medallion Jack had found, fingers trembling slightly. Nora broke the silence. "We need to talk about what's underneath this tavern. The tunnel collapsed, but it didn't seal itself. Someone knew it was there." Jack nodded. "You think someone opened it before we did?" "Or wanted us to find it," Nora said quietly, "and I think I know who." Maya glanced up, confused. "Who would care about a tunnel built 80 years ago?" Nora opened a folder she'd brought from her cruiser, papers neatly stacked, but edges wet from melted snow. "Aurora Hydro. They've been buying parcels around the lake for the last 6 months, every property except this one." Arthur gave a bitter laugh. "They'll get it over my dead body." Nora's eyes softened. "Let's make sure it doesn't come to that." A sound of tires crunching snow drew their attention. Jack turned toward the window. A black SUV rolled to a stop outside the tavern, its paint gleaming unnaturally clean against the frost. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, mid-50s, sharp as a winter blade. He wore a navy wool overcoat, cashmere scarf, and gloves so black they seemed to absorb the light. His hair was silvered at the temples, slicked back with meticulous precision. His face was angular, handsome in the way marble can be, sculpted but cold. "Dorian Vale," Nora murmured, "CEO of Aurora Hydro." He entered the tavern as if it were already his, removing his gloves slowly. His voice was smooth, deliberate, the kind that never needed to shout to command attention. "Sheriff Ellis, always a pleasure. And this must be Lieutenant Walker, the man who's been stirring up ghosts." Jack's expression didn't change. "You're early for breakfast." Dorian smiled faintly. "I don't eat small-town breakfasts. I eat time, and yours is running out." The tension thickened. Maya stood rigid by the stove, her knuckles white on the kettle's handle. Arthur glared but said nothing. Dorian continued, pacing the room like a lecturer before his students. "Aurora Hydro is constructing a hydroelectric expansion that will bring jobs, stability, and progress. But this charming tavern sits on land rich with groundwater. Your little tunnel proves it. Beneath the ice, there's a reservoir, one that can power the entire county." Jack crossed his arms. "You want to drain the lake." "Redirect it," Dorian corrected smoothly. "Nature adapts, so do people." His gaze turned sharp. "You of all men should know, Lieutenant. Adaptation is survival." Nora stepped forward. "You have no legal claim here. The Hartley Trust predates your company by nearly a century." Dorian smirked. "You mean the same trust whose documents conveniently surfaced after 80 years in a basement?" He turned to Jack. "You're a soldier, not a historian. You can't possibly think this story will stand up in court." Jack's jaw tightened. "Try me." For a brief moment something flickered in Dorian's eyes. Not anger, but curiosity. "I like men who think they can fight goats," he said softly. "It makes their defeat poetic." He placed a sleek envelope on the table. "A formal offer, $1 million, enough to rebuild this tavern anywhere else. Take it before the ice melts and your history sinks with it." Arthur slammed his cane against the floor. "You can keep your cursed money. This lake belongs to the people who remember it." Dorian's smile never faltered, but his eyes hardened. "Memories don't pay property tax, old man." He turned and walked out, his cologne lingering like smoke. The SUV door slammed, the engine roared, and he was gone. Silence filled the room. Then faintly, from beneath the floorboards, 3 knocks. Rex's head snapped up, ears forward. Jack crouched, pressing his palm to the planks. The rhythm was slower this time, almost deliberate. Maya whispered, "It's answering him." Arthur muttered a prayer under his breath. "That sound came the night my brother died. Now it comes again." Nora looked at Jack. "Whatever this is, it's waking up." That evening, Nora left to check county records while Jack repaired the cellar breach. Maya worked beside him, holding the flashlight as he nailed new boards into place. "You think that man will stop?" she asked. Jack didn't look up. "People like him don't stop until someone makes them." Outside, the sky darkened to indigo. The lake reflected the first stars, calm, deceptive. Inside, Rex stood at the window, tail stiff, a low growl vibrating in his throat. Jack followed the dog's gaze and froze. Out on the ice, two men in heavy parkas were walking toward the western bank, carrying fuel cans. Their movements were slow, practiced. Jack's stomach sank. "They're going to burn the tunnel entrance." He grabbed his coat, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "Stay with Arthur," he told Maya. "If they light that fuel, the whole ridge could go." "Jack," she started, but he was already out the door, Rex at his heels. The cold bit his face like glass as they sprinted across the snow. The men reached the shore first, kneeling by a stack of debris. One struck a match. Jack shouted, "Stop!" The flame flickered, then flared. Rex lunged forward, teeth bared. The men turned, startled, faces masked, eyes wide with panic. One kicked the fuel can, spilling it onto the ice. The fire whooshed upward, orange against the dark. Jack tackled the nearest man, fists crashing against fabric and bone. The other ran, vanishing into the tree line. Rex pinned the one on the ground, snarling as Jack ripped the mask away. A young man stared up at him, no older than 20, freckles, terrified eyes, the kind that had never seen real war. "Please," he stammered. "We didn't know. He said it was just insurance." "Who?" Jack demanded. The boy's lips trembled. "Dorian Vale." Behind them, the fire roared, spreading across the ridge. And as the heat rose, a new sound filled the air. Not the crackle of flame, but a deep, metallic toll echoing beneath the ice, as if the lake itself was ringing a bell. End of Chapter 4. Hook. The attack exposes Aurora Hydro's involvement, but the mysterious sound beneath the ice, a bell tolling from the depths, hints that something ancient has awakened below Lake Placid. The fire burned through the night, painting the snow in violent shades of orange and red. When dawn came, the ridge was a charred wound against the pale sky. The lake, however, remained eerily calm, a mirror of frozen glass untouched by flame. Jack Walker stood near the smoking debris, his breath forming pale ghosts in the air. Rex, his German shepherd, paced beside him, fur singed at the tips, eyes locked on the lake's center, where that metallic toll had rung hours earlier. Each time the dog looked there, his body stiffened, as if something deep beneath the ice was calling him by name. Behind them, Sheriff Nora Ellis and her deputy, a young man named Tom Reyes, surveyed the scene. Tom was in his late 20s, with olive skin, dark eyes, and a frame more used to paperwork than field work. He had the cautious energy of someone eager to prove himself. His breath fogged in short bursts as he snapped photos of the scorched snow. "You're sure it was Aurora Hydro?" he asked. Jack didn't answer. He was staring at the spot where he'd tackled the masked arsonist. The young man had been taken into custody at dawn, terrified, shaking, repeating the same name. Dorian Vale. Nora rubbed her temples. "We've got arson, corporate sabotage, and now Whatever the hell that sound was, I'll file the charges, but Vale's lawyers will bury it before noon." "Then we dig faster," Jack said quietly. Nora gave a small, tired smile. "You sound like a man who doesn't know when to quit." Jack shrugged. "Maybe that's why I'm still alive." They returned to the tavern by mid-morning. The warmth of the stove did little to ease the cold that clung to them. Maya Lindstrom was cleaning ash off the window panes, her copper hair tucked under a wool cap. She looked up as they entered, her eyes full of questions she didn't need to ask. Arthur sat near the fire, wrapped in his old blanket, staring into nothing. Jack explained what had happened: the masked men, the fire, the bell that had rung beneath the ice. Maya's face drained of color. "The bell," she whispered. "Arthur used to tell stories about that. Said it was buried when the first dam collapsed in the 30s. Arthur's gaze lifted, blue eyes suddenly sharp. "It wasn't buried," he said hoarsely. "It was sealed." The room fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "What do you mean?" Jack asked. Arthur leaned forward, voice trembling. "My father and the trust founders built a vault under the lake. The bell was forged from the old ship iron that brought the settlers here. They said it could hold memory, the soul of the lake. But something went wrong. The night they tested it, the water turned dark. The air went still. My father said it was like the lake was breathing through the metal. They sealed it after my brother drowned." Nora frowned. "So what we heard was the lake remembering," Arthur finished. Jack stood by a window, watching sunlight glint across the frozen water. "If the bell is real, we need to find it. Vale's men already know it exists. They'll come back." Maya's hand trembled around her mug. "And if that thing wakes up again?" Jack's voice was steady. "Then we make sure it doesn't wake alone." By afternoon, the sheriff had left for the county office to file charges, leaving Jack, Maya, and Rex at the tavern. The day was unusually still. Even the crows that haunted the treetops were silent. Jack gathered his gear: climbing rope, flashlight, a short ice pick, and the brass LLT medallion that matched the markings on the barrels. Something about it felt warm, alive. Maya followed him to the dock. "You're really going down there?" she asked. "I've dived worse," he said, checking the seal on his old wetsuit. "Besides, I need answers." She hesitated, then handed him a small silver cross on a chain. "It was my husband's. He wore it the night he drowned. Maybe it'll bring you luck." Jack took it gently, looping it around his neck beside the medallion. "Luck or memory," he said. "I'll take either." Rex barked once, impatient. Jack smiled. "You're staying topside, soldier. If I'm not back in 15, pull the line." The lake cracked under his boots as he crossed the ice. The sun hung low, a dull coin behind the clouds. He found the spot where the shimmer had pulsed and began cutting a hole. The sound of metal striking ice echoed across the valley like hammer blows in a cathedral. Finally, the circle gave way. Black water gleamed beneath. Jack took a breath and descended. The cold struck like a knife. His body adjusted quickly, the disciplined calm of years' underwater operations taking over. His flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing ancient timbers, rusted chains, and fragments of machinery buried in silt. Then, far below, a shape began to form, massive, round, half buried in rock. The bell. It was enormous, perhaps 10 feet high, carved with strange looping patterns that looked more like veins than engravings. A crack ran down its side, glowing faintly blue, as though light itself leaked from within. Jack reached out. The moment his glove brushed the metal, sound filled his head. Not noise, but memory. Laughter, shouts, water rushing, then silence. And beneath it all, a heartbeat. He jerked back, gasping through the regulator. The bell's glow pulsed once, twice, answering. The ice above him shimmered as if struck by invisible waves. Jack pulled the medallion from his suit, holding it near the crack. The glow brightened, spilling into the water like threads of liquid light. The bell sang. On shore, Rex barked wildly. Maya ran onto the dock, the rope in her hands vibrating with strange energy. "Jack!" she shouted, but her voice was lost to the wind. The water beneath the hole began to churn, ripples spreading in widening rings. The lake, once still, now moved like a living thing. Below, Jack tried to ascend, but the current dragged him down. He gritted his teeth, kicking hard, pulling on the rope. Something brushed his shoulder. Not a fish, not debris, but a hand. Cold, translucent, and gone in a flash. He broke the surface, gasping, ice cracking beneath him. Maya and Rex hauled him up, both half frozen and terrified. "What did you see?" she asked breathlessly. Jack stared at the hole, eyes wide, face pale. "It's alive," he said, "and it remembers." Before Maya could speak, a sound echoed across the lake, the deep toll of the bell, this time louder, closer, shaking the air like thunder. The tavern windows rattled. Arthur's cane fell from his hand. The sound rolled once more, then stopped. In the distance, near the far shore, a dark shape broke through the ice, a tower of stone that hadn't been there the day before. End of Chapter 5. Hook, the bell's awakening, shatters the frozen lake and raises an ancient stone structure from the depths. The hidden heart of the lake's memory now returned to the world. Morning broke with a colorless light that stretched across Lake Placid like a memory refusing to fade. The storm had passed, yet the air carried the strange stillness of something waiting to be understood. The stone tower that had risen from the ice stood silent at the lake's center, a monolith of black granite, its surface carved with looping sigils that glowed faintly when touched by sunlight. Jack Walker stood on the dock, wrapped in a wool coat still damp from the dive, staring at it with the focus of a man who had seen too much and yet wanted to believe. Rex, his loyal German shepherd, sat by his side, fur bristled, nose tilted toward the structure as if listening to a frequency only he could hear. Behind them, Maya Lindstrom was pouring hot coffee into tin cups, her face pale but calm, copper hair blowing across her cheek. She looked older than she had the night before, not from time, but from understanding. The tower's reflection shimmered on her eyes like liquid steel. "Arthur hasn't said a word since dawn," she murmured. Jack turned. Through the frosted window of the tavern, Arthur Collins sat in his chair wrapped in his blanket, hands gripping the brass medallion that had started all this. His gaze was locked on the tower, not fearful, not angry, but almost reverent. "I think he knew this would happen," Jack said quietly. Maya nodded. "The lake was never cursed, was it?" Jack didn't answer. The door opened, and Sheriff Nora Ellis entered, her uniform dusted with frost, dark braid tucked under her hat. Her expression carried the weight of too many truths she couldn't explain to her superiors. Behind her was Dr. Henry Cole, a middle-aged geologist from Albany, whom she had called for help. He was short and wiry, with thinning brown hair and the restless eyes of a man who had spent too many years staring into microscopes and not enough at the sky. "That tower," he said immediately, breath misting in the cold air, "shouldn't exist. I checked every record. No dam, no foundation, no seismic event to raise it." "It's real enough," Jack said. Dr. Cole circled his gloves in disbelief. "The rock's composition is Precambrian, older than the Adirondacks themselves. Whatever's inside it, it's been asleep for millions of years." Arthur's voice broke the silence. "It's not asleep. It's remembering." Everyone turned. The old man's face was ashen, but his eyes blazed blue. "My father said the bell would call home what was buried in the lake. The tower is its heart. It remembers every voice that ever called this place home." Jack's brow furrowed. "And Vale?" As if summoned by the name, the crunch of tires echoed outside. A convoy of black SUVs rolled into view. The lead door opened, and Dorian Vale stepped out. Immaculate even in chaos. Coat buttoned, silver hair precise, eyes sharp with triumph. "I see congratulations are in order," he called. "You've awakened my future power source." Nora's hand went to her holster. "You're trespassing on federal investigation grounds." He smirked. "Sheriff, the lake is public domain, and soon a national energy project. History has no legal ownership." Jack stepped forward, blocking his path. "You sent men to burn this place." Dorian's smile tightened. "I sent men to remove a problem. You've made it an opportunity." Before Nora could reply, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep sound rose from the lake, not the sharp ring of a bell, but a long, resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The tower glowed blue from its base upward. The ice cracked in spirals, water pushing through like veins awakening. Dr. Cole stumbled back. "It's releasing pressure, tectonic!" Arthur shouted. "No, it's listening!" He struggled to his feet, gripping the medallion. "The bell needs to be answered, or it will keep calling." Jack caught him as he swayed. "Arthur, what does it want?" The old man looked at him with tears in his eyes. "It wants to know if we've remembered." The humming grew louder, rattling windows. Rex barked fiercely, tail rigid. Jack's mind raced. The medallion, the cross, the connection. He pulled the two from around his neck, the brass and the silver glinting together. The light from the tower pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "It's not just metal," he said aloud. "It's memory, the lake's way of recording what mattered." Dorian scoffed. "You're talking nonsense?" Jack looked him in the eye. "Then listen." He stepped onto the dock, raising the joined cymbals toward the tower. The glow answered. A beam of blue-white light shot upward from the bell beneath the ice to the tower's crown, bridging water and sky. The air shimmered with fragments of voices, laughter, whispers, songs, echoes of everyone who had ever lived around Lake Placid. Maya gasped softly. "It's beautiful." But Dorian staggered back, face pale. "What have you done?" The tower's light spread outward, rippling across the lake like dawn itself. The ice melted, not with heat, but with memory, gentle, forgiving. The burned ridge cooled. The tavern's windows glowed warm, and then, just as suddenly, the tower began to sink, dissolving into water until only the smooth surface of the lake remained still and calm as glass. When the light faded, the silence felt holy. Arthur sank into Jack's arms, smiling faintly. "It remembered us," he whispered. "Now it can rest." His eyes closed peaceful. He did not open them again. Rex whined softly, pressing his head against the old man's knee. Maya covered her mouth, tears glistening. Nora lowered her hat in quiet respect. Hours later, the sun broke through the clouds, scattering light across the snow. Dorian's convoy was gone, his company already retreating from the scandal that would follow. The county would later declare the phenomenon a geological anomaly. But the people of Lake Placid knew better. That evening, the tavern reopened, its windows glowing amber against the twilight. Locals gathered in silence, then in song, remembering those who had built, lost, and endured. Jack stood by the lakeshore with Maya, their reflection side by side in the water. Rex sat between them, tail sweeping the snow. Maya looked up. "Do you think it's over?" Jack watched the horizon where the last ripples faded. "No," he said softly, "but it's forgiven." In the distance, from deep beneath the lake, came one last sound, not a toll of warning, but a single, gentle chime, a sound of peace. End of Chapter 6. Hook. Final resolution. The bell and tower return to the depths, sealing the memory of the lake. Arthur's death marks the end of an era, and the rebirth of the tavern unites the town. The past forgiven, the present reclaimed. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or angels. They whisper through ordinary lives, in the quiet courage of those who remember what matters. The lake did not demand worship. It simply reminded them, and us, that nothing truly disappears when it is born from love, sacrifice, and faith. The light that rose from Lake Placid wasn't just a mystery of nature, it was grace, a reminder that even in the darkest winter, God still breathes through small miracles. A hand reaching out, a heart choosing forgiveness, a soul daring to hope again. So when you wake tomorrow, look closer at the frost on your window, the breath of your dog waiting at the door, the stranger who smiles back at you. Miracles live there too. And if this story touched your heart, share it, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more tales of faith, courage, and redemption. May the Lord bless you, and may every lake in your life remember the light you've given it.